Hello friends. Welcome to Midnight Era Stories. Tonight, I invite you to close your eyes and drift into a forgotten place. A place lost to time, hidden beneath mist and memory. This is the story of a village that vanished in 1892. Listen. Let the wind guide you. And if you hear a bell at midnight, don't be afraid. Just remember to stay awake. Or perhaps don't. The village that vanished in 1892. In the forgotten hills of rural Pennsylvania, nestled in a valley that fog clung to like a shroud, there once stood a village so quiet and so cut off from the world that it was left off most maps. Its name was Halcombe Hollow, a name that, today, sparks hushed conversations among historians and ghost chasers, but no verifiable evidence of its existence. It is said that in the year 1892, something happened in that village. Something strange. Something final. Our story begins with a man named Elias Whitford, a traveling historian and chronicler of obscure American folklore. He had spent years roaming from one small town to another, collecting local legends and forgotten myths. It was a rainy afternoon in late June when he first heard the name Halcombe Hollow whispered by an old woman in a dusty bookshop in Philadelphia. "There's a place out west," she said, "a place not found by train nor stagecoach. A place the land swallowed whole." Elias, curious and driven by the scent of the unknown, set off on horseback, following half-maps and broken trails. Days passed, then weeks. Every time he asked about the village, locals grew quiet. Some claimed they'd heard of it. Others swore it never existed. At long last, after nearly a month of wandering through thick forests and craggy hills, Elias reached a narrow path marked by a broken signpost with no name. A trail led down into a dense woodland, and at its end, shrouded in mist and silence, sat Halcombe Hollow. The village looked untouched by time. Cobblestone streets wound through crooked wooden homes, their chimneys spilling out ribbons of smoke that vanished quickly into the cold air. Children played silently in the streets. Elderly men sat on porches, staring into nothing. There were no street lamps, no signs, no church bells. And yet, at precisely 3 a.m. on Elias's first night in the village, a bell rang. Elias bolted upright in his small inn room, heart pounding. The sound was distant yet clear, a deep, single-toned bell echoing across the valley. He looked out the window into the night, but saw nothing except swirling fog and the faint outline of a stone tower in the village square. But there was something odd about that tower. It had no windows, no entrance. It was made entirely of gray stone, and atop it sat a rusted iron bell that gleamed faintly in the moonlight, though no one was there to ring it. When morning came, Elias asked the innkeeper about it. The man, middle-aged with eyes like tired glass, simply replied, "Best not to ask about the bell, Mr. Whitford. It's old. It rings when it pleases." Days passed, and Elias began documenting everything in his journal. He noticed things, small things at first. The villagers never left at night. Children never played after sunset. There were no dogs, no cats. No birds in the sky. He saw mothers humming lullabies with no melody, no words, just a soft droning hum that echoed slightly off the hills. He explored further and found a stone tower up close. It had no markings, except one, the Roman numeral 3 carved faintly into its base. The next night, the bell rang again. 3 a.m. sharp. But this time, Elias wasn't alone in hearing it. Outside, several villagers stood still in the fog, staring toward the tower. Their faces were blank. Their mouths moved, whispering something too soft to understand. When Elias stepped out and approached them, they turned in unison and walked away, slowly disappearing into the mist. And then people began to disappear. First it was an old woman, her door left open, rocking chair swaying on the porch. Then, a family of 4, breakfast laid out, fire still burning, but no sign of them. No one spoke about it. No authorities came. It was as if Halcombe Hollow was not just forgotten, it was intentionally erased. Elias continued to write. He made notes of every vanishing, every unusual pattern, every night the bell rang. On the 6th night, he found something buried near the base of the tower, a locket, blackened with age, containing a picture of a girl who looked exactly like a child he'd seen earlier that day. But when he asked the villagers about her, they said, "There are no children here." That night, Elias stayed awake, seated by his window with a lantern dimly glowing beside him. At exactly 3 a.m., the bell rang again. But this time, it was different. The tone was longer, deeper, and carried an eerie resonance that made the glass in his lamp tremble. Then came the whispers. Soft at first, like the wind brushing against leaves. Then clearer. Voices. Multiple. Chanting or humming in an ancient tongue. The sound seemed to swirl around the tower, rising with the fog. Compelled beyond reason, Elias walked into the square. He saw them, villagers, dozens of them, surrounding the tower, all in white nightclothes, heads tilted back, eyes closed. Their mouths moved in unison, lips forming words Elias couldn't understand. In the center stood a child, the same girl from the locket. Her hands were raised toward the bell above. The bell rang again. Elias blinked. And the square was empty. He stood alone. The fog rolled in thicker than before, wrapping around him like cold silk. He staggered back to the inn, locked his door, and sat through the night clutching his journal. Morning never came. Or at least, the sun didn't rise. The sky remained dim, not night, not dawn. A gray, muted haze lay over the entire village. The trees stopped rustling. The air was dead still. Elias opened his window and called out to anyone. No reply. He stepped outside. The streets were empty. The innkeeper was gone. The store, the smithy, the schoolhouse, all deserted. The only thing untouched was the tower. And then Elias saw something that turned his blood cold. On every door in the village, someone had painted the Roman numeral 3, the same symbol on the tower. Fresh. Wet with black ink. And when he returned to his room, he found a note on his journal. You have been marked. Candle. The village was no longer just forgotten. It was alive. Watching. Waiting. Elias tried to leave. He gathered his journal, his maps, and a small satchel of supplies. He followed the single path that had once brought him into Halcombe Hollow, but found it covered in overgrown vines and brambles that hadn't been there before. There were no sounds. No birds. No breeze. Only silence. He walked for hours through the forest, always downhill, always turning. Right at every fork, just as he'd come. But somehow, he returned to the square. The stone tower loomed silently, and the fog thickened again. Desperation crept in. That night, Elias didn't sleep. He read through his notes, desperately, trying to find a pattern, something he'd missed. Then, just before 3:00 a.m., he heard footsteps. Not one pair. Dozens. Moving in sync. He blew out his lantern and hid behind the curtains. Through the window, he saw them, the villagers, pale and slow, their eyes entirely black, their feet bare, leaving no prints. They surrounded the tower. One by one, they looked directly at his window. They knew. Elias backed away. The bell began to ring again, louder than before. Walls vibrated. His vision blurred. The sound echoed inside his skull. Then the floor cracked. A black fissure spread beneath his feet. He screamed, stumbled, and silence. The journal was discovered 100 years later, buried in a sealed box. Beneath the ruins of a stone tower in a valley no longer marked on any map. The pages ended with one final entry, written in trembling ink. They do not die. They do not sleep. They remember. And now, they remember me. To this day, hikers passing through that forgotten region report strange sensations near an unmarked clearing. Chills, voices in the fog, the sound of a bell with no source. And always at exactly 3 a.m. This has been another whispered tale from the forgotten corners of time. If you're still awake, perhaps you're lucky. Perhaps you were meant to hear this. Or perhaps, you've been marked too.